Welcome very, very much to Conversations and a program with Alan. We were friends from about 100 years ago and everything, and he's going to endeavor to kind of talk to me about my life in a considerable degree, and he's also going to be sort of a joint effort, as it were, in trying to understand public access in Manhattan Network.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm Alan Steinfeld for New Realities, and I'm here with the maestro, the actual master of public access TV. And you go back, we're going to show a clip of one of the earliest and probably one of the most popular shows you've ever done with Jane Roberts, but when did you actually start public access?
Well, it would it would have had to have been back in the early 70s when everything was just coming into being. I was an academic and was teaching at a university when the cyber thing started.
Right.
And Jane Roberts was one of the very important early people who used video.
Well, let's see this. This is Harold now here in 2019. Let's go back to 1972, one of his earliest programs. His interview with Jane Roberts, and this is Harold then. Let's roll that in.
Oh, this was in her living room with Robert Butts, her husband.
Here we are, Harold.
This evening we're coming to you from Elmira, New York, and we are really very, very honored and privileged to be able to be in the living room and the seminar room of one of the very most significant individuals on planet Earth that have had experiences with an altered state of consciousness, Miss Jane Roberts, who, along with her husband, Robert Butts, have been investigating over these past 10-odd years, if I'm correct. I'm not exactly sure, but approximately 10 years. Another state of consciousness than which we are normally accustomed to dealing with. I'd like to welcome you very, very much to the program, and I thank you very much for inviting me here to be able to talk to you. I wonder, perhaps, whoever, I'm not sure which one of you might like to pick up on it first, but there will be some people in the audience, believe it or not, although it's a pretty aware audience that watches this program, but there will be some people in the audience who aren't aware of the material, the Seth material. Could you maybe just give us a little bit of a background for the general audience of the means by which, in a general way, you came in contact with kind of consciousness and how it all got started?
Bob?
This began late in 1963. One evening, Jane was writing poetry after supper, as her usual custom, and she went into an altered state of consciousness that was very unexpected by her. And she had an out-of-body experience. She found her consciousness leaving her body. And at the same time, she began to write in sort of an automatic script. Now, this experience lasted for over half an hour. And when Jane returned to her usual state of consciousness, she discovered that she produced this script called The Universe is Idea Construction.
This is in one evening?
In one evening, after supper. I was painting in my studio, and she was sitting out here. And I thought it was awfully quiet out here. And so I finally came out to see what she was so quiet about.
Yes.
And it was just at the end of this experience. She wasn't even able to use her voice to call me, to tell me what was going on.
Good heavens. Had anything like that happened to you before?
No, and actually it lasted a lot longer. It was well over an hour.
Wow.
No, I just, I've been a poet since I was a child, and writing. And the next thing I knew, my consciousness was just gone. And it wasn't an out of body in the respect that I had another body, or thought I did. My consciousness through like the window.
Okay, Harold.
That was her. She's wonderful.
Congratulations that you realize that's the only video ever of Jane Roberts. And actually, if we continue on that, you'd see her starting to go into a trance and channel Seth. But what was the nature of how did you contact her? I mean,
well, I was a professor, and I was a defrocked professor because I was very anti-authoritarian.
Right, but you're not a metaphysician. You're not even that spiritual, if you don't mind me saying. How did you contact Jane Roberts?
Well, actually, it was a telephone connection that I had made from New Paltz, which is very near where the Woodstock Festival was going to occur.
Yeah.
And my friend, who was a friend of mine who was doing video for me then, we actually had gotten somehow a 3/4-inch deck and everything, which was pretty unique. There wasn't much videotaping going on because the technology it was only just developing.
That was 72 about, you think?
I guess that was about then, yeah. And then I was a professor at University of New York at New Paltz,
Right.
which is just down the road from where the Woodstock Festival was destined to be performed with 600,000 people
Right.
stay at Woodstock. And it was a time of consciousness raising in the world at large. And I had been a professor and very friendly with some of the radical fringe that was all over the place.
Right. So how did you meet Jane Roberts, though? That's the part I'm
Well,
trying-
that's what it was. My friend, who was doing video for me, we'd go down to New York and do a program, and there wasn't any video, really.
Was there any Manhattan cable, public access?
Yeah, there might have been something early. It was the early beginning of anything television.
Because this program's really about Harold's whole career. I wanted to start with that video because that's probably your most well known. I mean, that's been duplicated and people have taken credit for that all over the internet because
I guess there are a lot of people interested in that. Yeah.
And Jane Roberts is a resurgence. What did you feel like when she actually went into the trance? How did you?
Oh, well, that was that little scene that was there.
Yeah.
That was what. Just to fill it in,
Yeah.
we had. I had a friend of mine who was real close with the hippies and all that kind of stuff. Right, Ray Bremser and Allen Ginsberg and those people. They were racing around up there near New Paltz where we were and everything. And we had gone. And there had been a big hullabaloo in the society with the energy crisis because it was going to be where the gasoline was going to go from $10 a gallon to 5 cents a gallon to $10, and everybody was worried about how are they going to get around. And there's a luxury hotel there that was.
But I just want to know, how did you feel?
Well, that's how it happened.
But how did you feel about being in the room when Jane switched her state of consciousness and Seth came through?
I was just going to say we had got a great big luxury limousine that had been sold to us for practically nothing because everybody wanted to get 1,000 miles to a gallon in a little Volkswagen, and we drove in that to Elmira. After a telephone conversation with my friend who was my fellow comrade, Steve Bell, that was a major videographer, and we drove to Elmira on appointment.
And she was both of them, Richard Butts, who took actually...
they were both wonderful
Richard,
people.
Everything Jane ever spoke in those dialogues were recorded by hand, by her husband, Richard.
My friend was probably more introduced me to that than I did by myself.
Right.
I wasn't into the consciousness thing as much as he was, but he was my dear friend, real smart. He's still around.
But when you saw her go from Jane
I'm
to
trying
Seth,
to get to that thing.
Okay.
And I'll say that little clip you saw of her, she was there, and like I told you, we became the very best friends, Jane Roberts.
You did? Did you correspond?
Yes, regularly.
Do you have a collection of those letters still?
Around somewhere.
Oh, that would be valuable.
And no, but we were in communication, friendly, but I didn't know her. I would just gone in, and she was going to have a class or something.
Yeah.
And then we went and we came back, and then she came into the room with a number of people, people who were involved with her thinking, and she was there talking just like Jane Roberts.
Right.
And I'm there listening to it. And it was the most it was a thing that just blew me out because all at once this voice came out of her. It had been very feminine, very gentle.
Well, like a regular person.
Yeah. And everything. And this voice all of a sudden just came out of her, and apparently she told me, and she wasn't even aware of it, but it came out and she said, "Good evening," like this, right? And it just scared the daylights
It
out.
scared the
Oh, it was powerful.
Did you
it was powerful beyond belief for me. as
You still
non-believer.
remember that moment?
Absolutely. It was just staggeringly
What do you
powerful.
think? I believe in channeling. I believe she contacted
Yeah,
a
there was
being
something
of
like
higher
channeling or
consciousness.
something.
Well,
Yeah.
it's very popular now. So she went into a trance, and
Well, it was popular then among they had hippies.
But
You know,
that-
people who like pot.
but
and
now
stuff.
it's kind of like mainstream. People talk about channeling all the time, but Jane Roberts was the first. I mean, how'd you feel watching that program of yourself?
Well, when that happened, I was just thunderstruck.
Wow.
It's sitting there in the room
Well-
because she went on talking about different kinds of good evening and on, and she had a very deep guttural voice.
I know, and you did.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
but I think her teachings, it's not that, yes, she transformed, but what she talked about, one of her books is called The Nature of Personal Reality. They are still very relevant to people's lives today.
Yeah, I
And-
think so.
and
More,
actu-
I thought of her as a friend.
Yeah.
Because we became very, very good friends. We communicated and everything like that. And I think I think Stephen, that's my video friend, got a thing where we did it by distance, from New Paltz.
and what kind of stuff did she write to you about in her letters? Do you remember?
I don't.
Well,
I
we'll
don't
have-
remember.
we're
It was
gonna-
all very much about good. It was all about consciousness, and
Well, there only
and
is-
that alternate state of Now, I was never, and I still am not, much of one who has much to do with all of that consciousness stuff. But it became what was the hippies, the hippie, and who is it? Who's the guy that was the real leader of the guy?
Abby Hoffman.
Well, Abby
or-
Hoffman, I knew Abby, not a
Yeah.
real close, but Abby and I knew. But no, Allen Ginsberg.
Allen Ginsberg,
Not
yeah.
Allen, not that. The real heavy-duty psychic guy,
Timothy Leary.
Timothy Leary.
Right.
We became quite close.
You and Timothy Leary.
Yeah, we did a program with Timothy
you had a
Leary,
pro-
and it was into that consciousness.
Do you still have
stuff.
that program available somewhere?
Yeah, it's up on your
Well, that's what I also want to talk to you
Yeah.
about is some of the greats, the political, the social
Yeah, I was
activists.
more into the political.
Well, but first tell me, what year did you start Manhattan Cable? Because you're probably the longest running producer in the country on cable
I
access.
don't want to say that. There were people way before
No,
that.
but
There were
now
people-
you're still doing it. That's 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. That's like 50.
gets to be long after a while.
But
This is-
and
yeah.
in that time, you've interviewed some of the real
it's
leaders.
about 5,000 hour long.
I know.
interviews
So
of
let's
that.
talk about from this early 70s you started.
Yeah, and it almost started with Jane Roberts, who you're very taken with.
Yeah, I am.
And we became friends personally.
So let's talk about some of the other. You interviewed Muammar Gaddafi.
That was very, very impressive.
How did you get in touch with the leader of Libya in order to
It was
interview
quite
him?
difficult because at that time, there wasn't like now. Everybody's a videographer. Everybody
Right.
in the world's a video. They got a little thing in their hand and all that.
How
but
did
at
you-
that time, nobody was.
How did you get to meet him and even
Well,
do
what
that?
it was, let me just try to recount. I was I've always been anti-authoritarian.
Right.
And I used to, I got into difficulty with the administration of any institution, which would, in the case of myself and everything, it was where you have what do you call it, a university,
Right.
and people gather and and then they judge people and they grade them and things. And I'm a almost pathological anti-authoritarian.
I can
And I was a
relate.
professor.
Right.
And as a professor, you're supposed to judge the students, which are the A's and the B's and all
Right.
of that. And I used to get rid of that authority that I had still before I got cashiered from the university. I used to get rid of the authority. They would come into the classroom. And in my classroom, it got filled with all the smartest people on the campus.
Right.
And they were
They
all
all came to you because
They came, no, but they came to my class, and it may have been they were just taking advantage of me.
No, maybe
No,
they
it
were
could be. Let me
interested.
explain it and everything, because it's still relevant to the social order, because the educational process is still very important, and it's still authoritarian.
Right.
And you're getting taught, you're going to be taking, understanding within there's a lot to know.
There is a lot to
There's
know.
a lot to know.
But I wanna
and
know-
the thing is, they have it and they have this thing where they divide knowledge or reality up into all kinds of specialized little bits and pieces that they call specialization.
Exactly.
And
But-
that's something that and I
But how
used
did
to
you get
get
to meet-
over that because I was a professor at the university. And I used to they would come into the class, and I had been at a university in California and a university in the Midwest somewhere.
Where are you from originally?
I'm in Detroit.
You
From
grew up in Detroit,
Detroit,
and then
Michigan,
you came to. When did you come to New York?
Well, that would have been New York. Oh, that was I'd gone as excuse me. I did university at various places, and I just sort of got to know the country that way. I was smart. I guess you'd say.
What did you study in school?
Troublemaking.
Okay. Did you major in that? Was that a
That was about
minor?
no, I was a geographer.
A geographer.
I just happened to fall into that because you can be interested in anything and get away with it without being
You spent time in
specialized.
South America too, I heard.
I spent about 2 years and wrote a very interesting. We lived, my wife and I, and the mother of my children, and I lived. That would be later, a little bit later.
Right.
I spent about 2 years in South America among the Aymara people. It was an ancient culture that was based in the Andes and based on a totally new food complex.
But when you got into video, you said you liked doing this, and then when did you actually have a chance to meet Muammar Gaddafi?
Well, that was very early, actually. He had come to power, and I see because when in those days that was pretty good if you were really interested in what they call video,
right?
Because there was practically nothing
How were you
around.
able to actually reach him and
Well,
connect
this fellow friend of mine, he had gotten into it, and some people knew how to make a zilch touch with a gitch or whatever you have to do. I never paid any attention to
Right,
any
you
of
weren't the technical end of that.
Terrible. I'm
But
terrible.
But how did you reach Gaddafi himself?
Well, I'm trying to say
okay.
it's a convoluted kind of visit.
Okay.
And it was around the same time. I'd done a program with the head of Time Warner.
Okay.
And you could do people. He was like a huge guy in terms of this thing called television.
Right.
It was emerging, and I was able to get to him because I was like a troublemaker, but with some conscience or with some smarts.
Right.
Could contact people of great substance.
Right.
Because hardly anybody was doing anything called television. It was just a huge thing to do it. And it was there.
Well, you mean television that was separate from the networks, like individual separate?
Television network, no, separate from radio.
Well, I know.
And,
but
all of Marshall McLuhan, I was to visit every spring up
you visited
in Toronto.
You did. You were friends with Marshall McLuhan.
No, I couldn't get close to him.
You couldn't?
I
But you interviewed him, didn't you?
No.
Oh,
I was
you did
never
not?
able to. He was up in Toronto, and he was the medium is the message. He was understanding the implications of the information technology that was emerging. That was a huge subject area, and it was coming to inform the whole society of the world. But it was early, and I used to visit with him every spring with Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan was a really leading guy in terms of understanding media. And he was at Newport when I was a professor at Newport. But anyway, there was a question about
Gaddafi. Tell to me how
I'm
you
trying
actually.
to tell you how I got to Gaddafi.
Yeah, I want to tell.
So it was a little roundabout and everything.
That's okay.
But anyway, I was targeted by the establishment, the academic establishment, because they want you to grade people.
Right.
And I used to not. And this had gone back to. I was at University of California, and I had the same attitude. I'm pathologically anti-authoritarian. Now, that's a thing that's not very widespread. Most people are trying to get something where they can control a bunch of people and make some money and do whatever. And the thinking of the society. But I was pathologically anti-authoritarian, and and this ties into Jane because that's where I was at University in California, in New York, and.
So tell me about Gaddafi.
Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Sorry.
But I was pathologically anti-authoritarian, like I said. And what I used to do rather early on, I always would have a bunch of people around, and they would be in the house with the kids and everything. And the smartest people on the campus, everywhere I went, would end up in our house with my
Great.
wife and my
In
kids
New Paltz.
crawling around. No, there was different places across the country.
Okay.
And in
Well,
California,
you were charismatic.
I was
You
in
liked to.
I don't know what. I was just anti-authoritarian.
So then what happened?
That was that was blowing in the wind.
And
that was coming to be what was
Wasn't
to be
that-
called hippies.
Were you a hippie?
Yeah, but sort of distant. I was sort of there, but I never was like drugs and stuff.
No, but you were kind of alternative, media
alternate
alternative.
consciousness, like called liberated, rather than in like a
Right.
the overall society is anti-authoritarian and fascistic.
I get it.
Got it? So
I
that's
got it.
something you don't want to be associated
Well,
with.
some people, it
and
was like
all the
stop-
institutions are based on that premise.
But it was the style of
That's
the
getting
times
me
to be
Mohawk.
anti-establishment.
Yes.
I mean,
No,
the
it wa-
hippies were anti-establishment. They made a huge change in
Well,
all the
and
social
I guess
rules
I
of
was-
culture
yeah, and I guess that was early.
in the 60s.
I was playing around with Allen Ginsberg and those guys up there.
Did you ever interview Allen Ginsberg?
Yes, I knew Allen.
But did you interview him on the show?
I did. Yeah,
Oh, you
I have,
did?
but we didn't get. I didn't. As it happens, Ray Bremser, his buddy, they lived together upstate.
Uh-huh. Well,
And
then-
he was. I visited with him there, and Ginsberg was there. And but anyway, the point being,
Yeah.
what I was trying to get to is, I used to just they would come into my class at a university, and I just gave everybody an A on the first day.
I got that, but that-
and I just said, that's it. You come. If you want to come, we'll do something. And if you don't want to come, get lost.
All
And
right.
that was not an attitude
Well,
that
what-
the academic community in favored.
Right, but
But
where,
it was from
where-
that context that we called Jane.
but where'd you cut Gaddafi?
Well, that's how I got to Gaddafi.
How?
Well, it was being in terms with some of the leading troublemakers across the country
so
and across the world.
somebody from
who
one-
we became friends with.
Some-
And our house got filled with all kinds of
So
trouble.
one of those people put you in touch with Gaddafi when he was president of Libya.
Well, it was before he was president, really. It was just I was the first person to get in touch with him as it happened, because he had made a revolution that I really got interested in, because I don't want to go into. He was a really real social and political leader.
What'd
of
you
the
think of
highest
him
order.
as a person?
I had nothing but total admiration for him. And
Really?
I'm really angry at what the United States did to that country.
Why do you, well, we don't, who
They
knows
just
why.
destroyed him.
Yeah, I
and
know.
he was a leader.
I know.
When he came, I had this idea. I'm in admiration for anti-authoritarian.
Right.
And mostly everybody's into authoritarianism.
Not me.
No, I know there's some exceptions, troublemakers and stuff. And I was a troublemaker.
So-
and I had a lot of friends who were troublemakers. And I
Right.
like troublemakers.
So you like it? Who else? You interviewed also
Yeah,
some
and-
of the Palestinian leaders.
yeah.
Yeah,
But my leading one in the Arab world was Muammar Gaddafi. I was really,
Right.
really taken with him. Ali Traki was the guy who represented the country. They made a revolution, and at the time of that revolution, they had like about 4% literacy in the whole goddamn
And
country.
after the revolution?
No, within about 20 years, they got 99% for every
Of the
man,
Libyan
woman, and-
population.
of the children, all got educated.
Why do you think they-
The health, because Gaddafi came in and he had all kinds
Why
of
did
money.
they get rid of him, you think? Why?
Well, it would. Why would the interests of the United States, the interests of the established world, get rid of somebody who's a threat by his? And he used to say that we're going to take care of the people,
Right.
not the bankers, not the
Right.
rich ones, and they're the ones who have all the power.
And now Libya's
so
a
they-
mess. It's a total mess.
It's all at the
No,
yes, that's right,
well-
and that's why I got in touch with it, because the word had gotten around through the grapevine with all the people like you,
Right.
who were, and Alan and that.
Right.
Word got around, Channer.
All right.
And so I got in touch with the guy at the UN, and they sent me over there, and I went. And I was there, and I got it together, and went at Sirte. There's a place that was the capital of the country.
You went
And
to
I was-
Libya.
Yes,
Oh,
I
you-
went to Libya a number of times because I believed in it as a revolutionary country ahead of the rest
And he
of the
liked
world.
you, and you had a
Yes,
good connection.
Absolutely, he was a
Correct.
troublemaker of the order,
Well,
but good troublemaker.
Well,
if you
that's
know
the
what
kind
I
of
mean.
people-
He
but-
got every kid in the country educated.
Well-
everybody got food, everybody got housing, everybody, and they made this water project where they had water coming. It was an advanced civilization, and you can't have those kind of people be in a position of advanced in the geopolitical structure of the world. That's why they did them in the end.
Well,
You can't have
I-
people from the black people or whatever from history.
Right.
They got to know their place.
well, anyway.
And he didn't, and he got a lot of support.
Well, he was in powerful. But let's talk about some of the other great people that you've interviewed.
He
Because
was really good.
I want this program to be a tribute to your contribution to media, public access, educating the
well,
public.
media, yeah, it was because with a lot of the people in New York were troublemakers.
No, but-
Allen Ginsberg and those people were troublemakers. I like troublemakers.
You interviewed, another one of your most famous interviews was with Buckminster Fuller.
He was absolutely unbelievably good.
Yeah, let's
He
talk.
was just absolutely gorgeous.
He was.
Absolutely.
And you still
gorgeous.
quote Buckminster Fuller a lot.
Absolutely. He's
What's one of
the
your
major,
favorite
he's
quotes
One of the,
of
I
Buckminster?
don't know what the favorite quote would
Well,
be.
you reference him a lot.
I
as
do, yeah.
What was so important about Buckminster Fuller?
Well, he was what was called that maybe is worth mentioning.
Yeah.
It might be relevant. He was what is called a comprehensivist. Now we're talking academic. I was an academic.
No, I like
and an
academia.
intellectual. All right. No, I don't.
Yeah, I do.
No, I don't. I don't like it. I like I'd like everybody to be free to do what they want.
But tell me about.
I don't like it because the academic process is one that divides your reality up into all the disciplines, that divides it up. So it's a divide and conquer thing
but-
for the leadership of the world.
But someone like Buckminster Fuller is important because he
Absolutely.
pulls it all
Intellectually,
and he
yes.
pulled it all together.
Absolutely.
So
couldn't
what did
agree
you
more.
enjoy? What some of the concepts that you remember that was so important to his philosophy?
Well, I'm not trying. I'm just trying to think about it. He said, I was a comprehensivist, and he was preaching don't be a specialist.
I'm a comprehensivist
Well, all right.
too. That's
You're-
why.
Yeah, but you're in trouble. You're one of the good guys.
I'm one of the
in my view.
troublemakers.
Yes, you ought to be a troublemaker in this world. It's
I
so
know.
unjust, and it's so inappropriate to what the future not only allows. But requires for the continuation of our species and the history of consciousness.
Thank
It's
you.
very important.
It is because
And
I
it's
think
overlooked by and large by the people who've got all the money.
conversations with Harold Chandler has been, in a sense, a social history of consciousness and the evolution of consciousness for the last 50 years. That's how I would
Well, along
characterize
with
it.
a lot of other people.
But we're talking
All
about
the
you.
Just say, is he a troublemaker? That's who we want to
Well,
get
you know,
with.
yeah, of course, our favorite troublemaker is Paula Gloria.
Paula Gloria is wonderful. Yeah, she would. But for the fans here of New York City,
Yeah.
you can look up early stuff, and Paul is there on the.
But Paula didn't go back that far. So let's talk about the
She
history.
did. She went back. pretty
No,
far.
I brought her in here in about, I think about 2001 or two. We
wow.
were, anyway.
It
but-
seems like Paul has been around forever.
Right, but let's go back to
Wonderful,
like
yeah.
when did you get into, so you did some of these videos with Jane Roberts and Gaddafi, and then when did you get into public access? You were
What
here.
about? Well, I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I liked our guy who was at New York University, who was a the
media
guy.
person?
Yeah.
New York University was
George Stoney.
Oh, George Stoney.
was
Did you
one
know
of-
George?
Yes, I did know him very well, and he was one who got a little bit upset with me because I didn't. I didn't believe in specialization, and the academic process is all specialized.
So what was
And I
George?
think you could be interested in everything.
What's George Stoney's relationship to public television,
He
public
was
access?
an absolute pioneer,
Mm-hmm.
a pioneer from down South Carolina, where he was a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He had been interested in Nanook of the North and the early film made out of the film board.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good film was being done out of Canada.
So when did you decide to be an actual producer on public access access television?
Well, I don't know really. I think it was when first that friend of mine who took me to Jane.
And that was in
He was all a believer of Jane.
because you've been a continuous presence since the mid
Yeah,
'70s.
I'd been doing trouble. I'd been doing television, and we had ended up. It was really kind of funny in a way because there was this. It's a moment, a picture of the times. But we had up there. I don't know if you've ever been up New Paltz, Woodstock.
I have.
Woodstock, and
have.
you know the big. What's the big lake?
The big lake up there.
Mohonk.
Yeah.
They have a great, big, beautiful alpine lake up there. I think it's the Rockefellers and the rich.
Right.
And the rich used to come over the descendants up there to summer, and you'd go there. And that was right there at New Paltz where I was.
So what are some of those other early radicals you remember from the '70s that you interviewed for your show?
I don't know how much they remember.
I mean, there were Timothy
Oh, but
Leary.
the thing is, let me just, Timothy Leary. I had a couple of programs with Timothy Leary, and he was really smart.
Yeah, he was.
I liked him, and
Harvard.
he was also a troublemaker.
He was.
See, I like troublemakers.
But you never did LSD like he did.
Well, I didn't do much of it. I did a little bit.
Oh, you did do a little bit.
bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who else do you remember from that time in the '70s?
Well, I'm trying to get to it. They had a beautiful hotel there, like something out of Europe, you know, a beautiful hotel. And then came, and they would come in their limousines.
Up
You know,
there,
they would
is that
come in
Millbrook? Up where Timothy Leary had his place up there in upstate New York, right?
Well, no, Timothy Leary was, I don't know.
I think it was
Timothy
Millbrook. Anyway.
Ginsburg was upstate
Yeah.
with Ray Bremser. That's where he lived.
Right. right.
I went there to visit him with our. Anyway, the point is I want to get across because it's there, and they had these great big limousines that would go up to would take them from the train station up to be in the beautiful up. I mean, and they were like limousines with the thing that goes up in the front, and you have all that. And I had a lot of characters that were sort of funny and whatnot, and troublemakers. And we used to, so what happened is we had what was called the energy crisis there in the 70s. So everybody who used to drive these great big limousines all of a sudden only drove a Volkswagen, so you could get 45 miles to the gallon.
Right.
And everybody was doing it, and they wanted to get rid of the things.
Right.
So it was Bremser, who was his close friend of Alan. They went there. He and I were both totally unable to understand a nut from a bolt or anything in terms of anything mechanical.
Me too.
But they had this limousine that they didn't want to have. So we didn't have any money hardly or anything, you know, and everything. But we went and we got one for a couple $100. We bought
limousine.
A limousine with the window that goes up like this.
With Ginsburg and as Bremser.
Bremser and I did. And Bremser was worse than me with a tool. He didn't know how to do anything with a tool, you know. You get a wrench or anything. But we went up there. And we made the deal because they didn't want to. Everybody had to get 1,000 miles to a gallon to be a citizen, and we were against it. So we got a.
Did you ever do an interview with Bremser?
I lived with Bremser. He lived in my house. Bremser lived in my house. He was a wonder, the son of a gun.
Well, let's talk about.
But he stole something out of my refrigerator once. I had a little consciousness wrapped up with a thing. Who was a friend or something, and he drank that.
He drank what? Like a little.
He took it out of the refrigerator.
What did he drink?
A bottle of some kind of a wine or something.
But
it was nothing.
Anyway,
but the point being is, so we got that limousine, and we took it, and we would go to Washington. Okay, that's got us going to Washington. And then I was a cashiered professor for not grading and everything. Had a lot of friends, and the other faculty would let me use a landline to call to Washington.
Right.
So I started setting up interviews in Washington.
And who did
we
you?
had the thing.
And who did you interview?
A number of senators and stuff like that.
Anyone stand out for you?
No, they're all of us class, really. They're all, they have a lot of people who are in the leading edge of political control and everything.
Did you ever interview like McGovern or?
Not McGovern.
Mostly Democrats.
I got involved with Russell Long and some people that had a system of economic thinking.
Oh, you were an economic thinker,
well,
right?
yeah. I was interested in everything.
I know.
I wanted to be interested in everything and see connections.
So what stands out for you?
Well, I'm trying to tell you, we got that limousine, and we used to go to Washington in that limousine.
I see.
And we had one guy who would dress up like a chauffeur, and it was a thing where we're driving to Washington, and we got a license plate. I forget what it said, but it was driving a beautiful limousine. We're in the back, and we would drive into Washington in that limousine. And everybody would move over and everything because it must be some big shot inside that limousine.
Right,
and we just played that to the hilt.
Right.
That was when they had the time of Watergate.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I
All
do
that
remember that in the
all that.
74.
So that's playing in the field of Washington. And I talked to a number of people talking about it. It gets to be boring, all that economics and the politics.
Right. So, but let me ask you, you've been now involved for about 45 years into television.
You add them all up, yeah.
And how do you think the medium has changed? Has people's response to you
changed?
changed?
Well, I'm very involved in it. I think we're at amazing times.
In what
really.
way?
Yeah. Well, media. And the media is so incredibly important, and it's coming in exponential terms.
Don't you think it's more important now because as opposed to the 3 stations that we had for the last, 50 or 60, 70 years, ABC, CBS, NBC, now we have the internet, we have so many access to news that we wouldn't get from a mainstream that just wants to brainwash us.
Yes, well, yes, they do that, and we've got 15 million years
of what?
Of existence of our species. And then it gets down to 20,000 for the Holocene. And now we're coming into the Anthropocene.
What is the Anthropocene?
The Anthropocene is the period, the geological period, not mere a historical period, geological period. We're transcending history, and it's now called the Anthropocene. And we're coming into a new relationship evolutionarily in universe. And so the
relationship to what? The universe?
To the universal consciousness. Yeah, and we're coming into a time of liberation, I would hope. Or it's interesting.
Sounds like something Seth would have said. You know.
Yeah. Oh God, you never knew what Seth was going to say. She was wonderful. I mean, it was coming up with all kinds of things, and she had this wonderful feminine way about her. I loved her. She was great. But now I think we're at a most incredible consciousness time. I think we're at a time of qualitative transformation, and it's a very, very interesting time because we've come up with all of the, like in Washington, they've come up with all these systems of geopolitics. I had to get involved in politics with the people and everything, and they've got that, and they've developed the weapon systems, which have been the basis of political hegemony by the political leadership over the time.
Right.
And that's now at a point where the weapons, which are the leading edge of that gives one an advantage over the others, have now, and I'm almost certain, but practically everyone I can get, Gilder, all the people I can read and everything, they have in fact become finally at the level of capability in their destructiveness. Species lethal.
I believe
that.
that.
If they were to be unleashed.
But we also have the technology to feed the world. If we could also
that's another.
You know, so we're caught between total destruction and total abundance.
Now that
in a way.
That wasn't the case in 1900.
No,
we had
it
a
wasn't.
long period to just rest.
So what does that mean now that we
we're
have
at
this
a time.
case?
I don't know. I think it's just the most interesting time to be alive. We're at a time of qualitative transformation of the human condition, and we're mired in the geopolitical thinking of the past, which is whoever's got the biggest club hits the other one on the head and steals everything and has all the ladies and all the rest of it, and that's the history of the world.
So what do you think we
could do? And that's still in place.
But I think things are changing because of consciousness.
Well, I'd like to know where the okay, that would be fine.
That's what show I do
Where?
is pushing towards an equanimity among people of generosity and less greed and sharing of wealth and the sharing
Yeah, I'd
of
like to
power.
have some more examples of it among the geopolitical leadership. It's
Well,
still just a bunch of people who own everything.
I don't know. I think people like Elizabeth Warren wants to tax the.
Well, that would be a political person who's trying to get
I don't know
something
who's the
different.
best person right now, but we'll find out
God,
soon.
let's not get into all.
Okay,
no,
let's
if
not
we
get
wanna
into all that.
into it,
But I don't want to
wanna
get into
know
that
is
because
what's
this
the
is
time?
no. The
What's our
time is
time?
this. We have another about 20 minutes here.
Oh, 20 minutes.
So I want to
Okay.
get into more your history, Harold.
My
and
history? Well,
what
my
do you
history-
think? So you started in the 70s.
I started in 1935, March 14, 1930, Einstein's birthday.
March 14th?
I was born on March 14.
Okay, and then when did and you
1935.
got started in 1970 something the show that you're doing right now, Conversations with
Well,
Harold
that
Tanner.
was when this fella who I met, who knew, he used to go, he was one of the first of the hippie types
Yeah.
who would go and use media to create something other than some business model.
And that's what you loved, isn't it?
I'm afraid I admit to that.
That's
yeah.
okay.
I like
How
troublemakers.
So how many programs do you think you've done in the last 45
I don't know.
years?
I don't know. I've got about 5,000.
About 5,000?
About 5,000 hour-long programs. They're open to anybody. Anybody can go anytime.
That's been very generous of you to share this knowledge.
Well, it's just easy. And
Well, who else stands out in your mind as one of the real highlights?
Well, you've hit a lot of them, really.
Well, I know,
There are
but
a lot of people around New Paltz and around New York too.
Would any more social, impactful historians that?
Well, yeah, I had to get involved. I got older.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you like to be 35 again? It must be great to be 35 and you just sing the praises down the highway singing.
You were 35 in that video we saw
I know,
there.
yeah.
You were about 35
Well,
there.
I'm just wishing them all well, the youth and everything.
But
I
tell me,
think-
who stands
I think
out?
the major thing that motivates society is still all this awful thing about economics. They don't have an economic system.
No, but what were some of the things that drove you, that kept you going and kept you alive in media? Why did you keep pursuing it for 40 years?
I don't know. I mean, I do know. I do
Tell
know.
me
It's not
what you-
fair.
you'll tell
I
me.
guess I hate to say it,
Say
but
it.
I think it was a sense of mission. No,
Well,
a sense,
that's a
sense-
beautiful thing to say.
Yeah, but it's so lame.
No, it's not.
No, what is not lame is get a big bank account.
No,
That's
no.
all that matters.
No,
In
all
the
that matters
society
is that
at large.
you had an impact on people through your videos because you had a mission.
Yeah, and I may
And-
have been disappointed in that
No,
I was
were
a
you-
terrible businessman.
But were
I'd
you
give everything
disappointed
away.
in your conversations with Harold Tanner? That was a success. It's still going.
Well, that's true.
And so congratulations.
Well, yeah, okay.
you're-
I'm still.
You're a national treasure.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, you are.
My mother thought I was.
Well,
She
no,
was
I
very-
think you are because you've stuck with it and you've seen the industry change. Now,
Yes,
I think
that's
public,
absolutely true. It's going exponential.
and I think public access is more important now than ever in the past.
I think so. I'm not sure though, because
mean-
what is this G thing? This G5?
Oh, G5 is
And the things that
another
are coming
technology.
up. Well, I know, but the
tell me
G5
about the future. Who do you hope to? Who do you admire now? Who do you hope to have on your program?
Well,
what are you looking forward
well,
to?
gosh,
I mean, who
I
stands
can't
out?
hardly think of a better thing than this guy, Alan Steinfeld, is
No,
very good
no.
for this moment.
I know this
He's
moment,
very
but who
good
do you-
for this moment.
who do you-
And he's representative of a very good order
Thank you.
of importance in the human society. I don't have much. I don't know who among all the political leaders.
Well,
I
talk
got
ab-
intrigued with Russell Long for a while.
Let's talk about-
and with a guy called Kelso who did
Oh, Kelso,
finances.
that's right.
He
Let's-
was and it may be relevant. He tied in a little bit to Gaddafi.
Let's talk about though the scientists
Economics. I want everyone to be free.
economically.
Yes.
I think we need free energy, that we don't have to pay for, and I mean, there's free energy
Well,
everywhere.
no, it's a thing like we just said. You could It's only about 1970 that the assumptions, the intellectualizing, came to a point where they had weapons that had now finally gotten past the mere matter of being able to wipe out the other guy and win and take
but
all the booty, but that we
Right.
could kill every single.
know.
And no, not just a throwaway line. If there's a release of the irrational elements of war and so forth, and we can't allow our system to be not recognized as the leading one. All the rest of the stuff that still goes on. We finally got to the point after 15 million years of evolution to where we could have a just order.
I think
But
we're
we
almost
haven't
there.
arrived at it.
No, we're almost there.
No, we're not there at all. I don't see it.
One more.
I don't see an economic system. that
No,
makes
I
sense.
think we're
We're
closer.
still all slaves.
I agree. We're slaves to an
We're-
economic.
Well, a slave is not a particularly good place
no,
to
but I
be.
think we're closer to change than we ever have. We have a long way to go, but we are making progress. Hopefully.
Well,
I think-
that would be, of course,
I think more
to
people
be
are-
desired.
Let's
And
just
I wish there were more evidences of it being realized by our intellectual leadership.
let's just talk about some of the scientific minds you've interviewed
Okay.
in your.
Well, yeah,
There was
yeah.
Dorian Sagan.
Well, Dorian's a friend.
yeah, he was the son of Carl Sagan and Lynn Margolius, right?
I know he's written great stuff.
And what's
he's a
the-
great poker player. Did you know
I
that?
did not know.
He
What's-
is really good at poker.
What stands out for you in some of the interviews we've done with Dorian? Anything?
I think of Dorian. I love that thing that he and Lynn have done. Lynn Margulis.
about the
That
Gaia,
was
the Gaia.
Gaia. Yeah.
And,
They've got a thing on my website, a tribute to Gaia and to her. I hope she's still going strong.
I don't think
Dorian's still around.
but she's not.
I don't know for
No,
sure.
I don't think she is. But
She's one of my heroes, and the thing that she writes, the biology she writes, in
Yeah,
Dorian, and that's a
symbiosis.
very optimistic possibility.
who else did you interview that
Oh, well,
was?
Fuller was a limelight for
And,
me.
and
He
you-
was somebody that in
Did
the.
you
I'm what am I? 95.
Oh, you're not 95. You're 85.
85. In my life.
Well, you interviewed Michio Kaku too.
Yeah, many times.
Many times.
Many
Do you
times.
have a contact him? I'd like to interview him for my show.
I should try to get
Okay.
in touch. I should try to.
He's gotten world famous now. You can't even
Well,
get him.
Michio,
Kaku.
I did him when he hit New York. He'd
I
only
know.
just hit New York,
Brilliant guy, very
Yeah.
important.
and he was very interested in the major issues that remain,
Did you ever?
and they remain. This thing about the species lethality of the means by which political process has been done over time has now reached a point where if it goes off, without a doubt, every single human being will be obliterated. Now, we were protected in our impotence,
Right.
but we no longer are,
Right.
and they're still saying the same nostrums.
Did you interview Margaret Mead at all?
No, I never did. I would
didn't.
like to. Great admirer.
Yeah, no,
From
she was
distance.
very important. Because now, what keeps you going? You still do 5 programs a week at 85. You have unstoppable energy. What keeps you going?
Well, I don't know. I have a curiosity, I guess.
Still,
and I
always.
still have this. It's a little hard to hold on to when you get to be my age and everything. But I'd love to be 35 again, full of vim
Well,
and
let's
vigor.
just say you're 35.
Vim and vigor. I'd like to, and all of that. But I've still got what I guess it is, whether it's real. I like to think that I got a chance to maybe help make a small contribution.
Well, maybe you
to
have.
the averse to our destroying the whole. Not the planet, but the whole species.
I think you.
I think the species is worth saving, and I'm very, very concerned with the cavalier attitude of our political and economic.
I agree with you.
leadership.
You have made a contribution, Harold.
Well, I don't know if I have. It
I
didn't
think
seem
you-
to me Jane Roberts was good.
Well, there are lots
But
of
a lot of
pro-
the people I liked weren't particularly recognized by the
Like who,
establishment.
who else?
Well, the establishment.
Well, forget the establishment.
Well,
Who
I don't think you
Who would you
can
think was
forget-
good that wasn't recognized by the establishment?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. The whole intellectual establishment,
Right.
the political establishment.
And the
I don't know who or where there's hope to be had. I'm actually pessimistic that we're probably going to blow the whole thing up.
I don't think so. I think we've overcome that obstacle. Of course, there's still a lot of problems in the world, but I hope, my vision is that we could come into a time that's more utopian.
Well, I believe in that. That I do have. Yeah, that's I got. It's like almost a wish.
Well, I
that
think
we're going to make it.
we are going to make it, Harold.
Well, I can't say anything certain or anything.
We've made it so far, right? We
Well-
haven't blown ourselves up yet.
No, but they're ever more destructive.
Well,
And the same geopolitical processes of geopolitics, whoever's got the biggest gun wins. And that's still in the place, and whoever's got the biggest army wins, and the same old geopolitical thinking is in place.
I mean, I
And
wanna
they're still
put some of-
fighting over the same bullshit.
I wanna put
nonsense.
no, if I put some of my own input, I think when the extraterrestrials come,
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
well,
Sorry.
they're here watching us, making sure we don't blow up. They've been seen over the nuclear power missile sites,
Really?
deactivating that.
All right.
I think somebody's watching. I mean, we're going to have to take care of our own problems, but I think there is a force making sure we don't blow ourselves
Well,
up.
I hope you're right, my brother. Believe me, I hope
Harold.
you're right, but I don't see it.
Well,
I mean, I don't
see
know
it.
it. That's all, and it's not in my experience.
Okay, Harold. But so, what are you looking forward to now? As far as like I said, is there anybody that really excites you out there?
Well, no, there's a lot.
Like
There's a lot. No, I'm very, very excited about the prospects for our to make this, and also there should be a realization of the enormity of the qualitative transformation that we're in the middle of. And it's not. They're still talking about bond markets and things like that. All the things out of the past. The leadership, the intellectual and political and economic leadership is still all caught up on the old nostrum.
Right.
I wish they were not seeing the need for that, but they do. And it's still what's in the driver's seat.
Would you have done anything differently in your life?
Oh my God, how can you count the ways? Yeah,
Well,
we all would want that.
You
Yeah.
really? What?
No, I'm pretty satisfied. I would like to be able to be a little more secure, and I'm quite happy. I'm doing programs,
Yeah.
and I'm able to do them, and the equipment's getting so small and the equipment's getting so powerful that you can really have an effect. It used to be hard to get anything done 100 or 50 years ago. You could hardly get technology in the computer.
What was
So
one?
I think there's hope in that. you
What
know.
was one of the most mind-expanding shows you've ever done?
I don't know quite what that means.
I mean, you went in one way thinking one thing. Maybe it was a Jane Roberts thing, and then when you finished that interview, you suddenly had a different perspective.
Yes, it could have been because my friend was all into it, and I was more political than it everything. But when she said, she's sitting there, and she's such a lovely thing, and she goes and she's sitting all in a rocking chair, and she's talking to these assembled people that were devotees and everything, and then out of the blue of that lovely presence, there came this most deafening male voice, and it said, "Good evening," and it just made me go goosebumples.
What did you
I
think?
mean, it was really interesting, and she was being very authentic.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So she was really tapping into this male.
I guess I never did.
Well,
do that,
I do
you know.
believe it, that consciousness
yeah.
is non-local, and she was able to shift her awareness to, like a radio receiver, tune the dial and get another.
Well, I
feeling
have
coming
to agree
through.
with you and people like you. I think it's wonderful they're there and they're getting to do it.
I
And
think
there's
if you-
hope, I would think, but I don't. I guess I don't have anybody now that you. I don't know.
I'll
who-
bring some people into your show if you want to
well,
interview
maybe,
some more people
maybe,
like
but
that.
well,
Actually, there's someone I just
I'm
interviewed.
more in the political realm. Who is
But-
there worth paying attention?
What, did you
to?
like Obama?
Well, in a sense, yeah. It's too bad he got bypassed. you
Well,
know,
he would.
and everything, and his.
I mean, who else is out there now? That's
Well, that's
on-
what I'm trying to tell you. That's the problem.
Well,
In my way of thinking,
I do
would-
like Bernie Sanders. He's a
Well,
radical. He's an old hippie,
yeah, he's
radical
left
change
wing.
maker.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
think he's important.
Well, you gotta like him for.
Well,
that,
of course
but-
you gotta like
But he
him.
hasn't got much chance.
I don't know. If people keep saying that, he doesn't.
Well, the
but I
good
think he
people
does
don't
have
have.
a chance.
It seems on the surface of it, the good people don't have much of a chance to have an influence because
Well,
it's still
I
only
think-
the super rich and the super
No,
powerful who have any say over what's
I think
going
that's
on.
why we have to get rid of those in office that support the super
Shall we
rich.
do it by massive
revolution.
revolution?
This is what
Pick
start
up
with
the
going.
gun?
No,
I'm
not
in-
about the gun.
Oh, well,
it's
then
about people coming forward and voicing their choice. It's about people. It's
Well,
not
I'm
about
sure
violence.
People have much to say about anything.
Well, they do. They
Well,
want everyone
well,
wants
you
to
are
just
gonna- you're
live
gonna-
their life.
Yeah, okay.
Right? They
Yeah.
want to be happy, want to live with their family, want to have enough food, and want to do what they
Yeah,
love.
yeah, yeah.
That's people all over the world.
Yeah,
There's
and
more that unites
You're
them.
right, and we do have a capability of providing that for everybody,
Yes.
including all the creatures. We have the ability.
We do have
but
the
we
ability.
don't have the willpower. Or
We're
or
getting the willpower.
I don't see it.
I see it.
Okay, well,
I
I'm
mean,
glad you do.
I do. I have
Yeah.
hope. I have possibility.
Well, I do too, but mine's a little bit more jaded, I guess,
Well,
by
you've
age.
been around a
You're
while.
just a kid.
I'm
So when
just a
you're
kid.
young, everybody thinks that way. But when you get older, you'll come to realize.
No,
I'm
I
making
think
a joke.
No,
I'm
I
making a
know, I
joke.
know, no. But Harold, you've done an incredible job. I want to thank you on behalf of the public and the thousands and thousands, probably
My
hundreds of
mother
thousands.
thought I was good.
Well, your mother was right. You know why? You kept at it. You've been a pioneer, and you haven't stopped.
Well, we give it a try.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Harold Channer,
Oh, that's quite
for
a
your
bit.
time and the last 45 years
Well,
of
yeah.
your dedication
May
to.
this a beginning and a continuation
To
of a
inform-
wonderful friendship between us.
Well,
Okay.
we've been
And all the
friends
good
for about
people you-
25 years.
Yeah, I know. That's right. That's encouraging. That is
It is
And the
encouraging.
good people are encouraging.
Right, and you have
But
good people
these
around.
clowns, I just don't know.
Well, there's always been clowns.
Yeah, no,
Did
I
you ever-
meant clowns, not clowns.
I know.
Yeah.
Did you ever interview Ken Kesey? Do
No,
you know?
I
no,
didn't.
he was a
It happened.
radical.
I might have, but I didn't. Yeah.
No. Okay, I want a list of everyone you've interviewed.
I
so-
got them all up on the YouTube.
Okay, we're gonna
internet
close
interviews.
with the closing credits of all those people.
There's about 5,000 programs at
Names
Channer.tv.
And you have copies of all these, right?
They're all up on YouTube.
No, but you have the hard copies.
I have a bunch of them, but
I-
mostly I do pipe on the.
Okay, are you
What's
gonna?
the story?
We have about 3 minutes
What's
left.
happening?
3 minutes
3
left.
minutes. Oh,
So,
we
are you
can-
going to donate this to a university for
I
your
would- no,
archives?
I haven't thought. I would like to have.
I think you should.
But people are mostly not interested.
They are interested, Harold. You
No,
have
I
a-
mean the institutions and that.
I think they are. You have a history. You have an archive that is worth preserving that goes from a 3/4 inch, the ancient,
That is true.
to like now you could put everything on a little chip.
I know, and it's going exponential.
What do you think about that change?
I'm incredibly encouraged
Where-
by the
and
internet.
Let's just imagine where we could go in the future. What's possible?
Well, I do like to think that way and everything.
And we could be 35 again, Harold.
Well, that would be great, wouldn't it? 35.
I just want to
yeah.
keep encouraging you to keep up the beautiful
Well, no,
work.
I'm going to keep it up. I make new programs all the time, and we can make them in our home now. You can make them and put them out all over the world. I want to stick with MNN. I'm a great believer of Manhattan Neighborhood
I know
Network
you've been but you are the
and
longest
public access.
and
I
you've
wish
been
there was more
well,
support.
You're one of the
it
all-time producers
institutions.
here.
There isn't much support from public access
Well,
now across
I think
the country.
any like
No, it's not got the money. The money.
Right.
It's only money. That's
But
the only
anything
thing.
you wanna
And
l-
that's such a schlocky thing to
No,
be
I think it's
interested
more
in.
about integrity. I think it's more about wisdom. I think it's more about
Not
speaking
the system,
from
not the
the heart.
system the way
We're
it's working.
overcoming
This
the system.
MNN is an anomaly in
Well,
my way of thinking. You
it-
happen to have had some very, very good people, George Stoney and all
Yeah.
the people who put some practical
And
reality
made it
here.
preserved. We preserved it. And
Right.
you've been like the foundation. I'm
I
serious.
haven't paid a lot of attention
No,
to
but
it.
you've been there from the beginning.
Yeah, and I'm just glad it's here. I think it's wonderful.
Do you
There should
remember
be
the
a lot
early
more.
studios?
Well,
What
wait
were
a
they
minute,
like?
early studio.
I mean, what were they like when you went into
The
those-
early studio was in. I hate to mention.
No,
I
say
hate
it.
to bring this up.
Bring
but
it
the
up.
early studio for me
Yeah.
is the experience of Jane Roberts in her
No,
living
no.
room.
What about
with
the early?
camera? I had the camera.
Right.
3/4 inch deck thing like this, you know.
Right.
And it was new.
What about coming
Yeah,
to the
that's
early
exact-
Manhattan cable studios? What were they like?
Well, where was it? It had to develop. They were.
There's
all
one on
over there.
23rd Street. I started on 23rd Street.
Yeah, Jim Claddock, remember down on 23rd Street?
I
He
remember
had the
23rd
place
Street. But
and all
then-
that. Yeah, it's been an interesting time.
Harold, it's
But
been,
as I'm talking about the society at level at James.
well, this is
it's
why we're
still only money.
But no, this is why we're doing public access, because we're showing people it's not about money, it's about information, encouragement, wisdom, and possibility.
I shouldn't have used that last sentence then. It's not only about money, it's also about...
You got about 10 seconds.
Okay.
It's good.
Thank you,
It's
Harold
only
Channer.
It's only
Alan
there for all
Steinfeld with the
it's only
great,
good for
the
all things.
everlasting Harold Channer. Thank you for your time here. And thank you for your
Coming
contribution.
back again next time. Please tune in, and happy holidays coming up. Christmas time and all that. Hallelujah.
And thanks for your contribution, Harold.
And you, sir. Okay.
Alan Steinfeld.